How's it going, guys? And welcome to my review of Ruthless Aggression, Episode 4, The Resurrection of Shawn Michaels. And this talks about Shawn Michaels' return to the WWE in 2002 when he came back and he started competing again. And many people thought that Shawn Michaels was gone for good. And you'll hear a lot of different things about Shawn Michaels, but one thing that stays consistent whether you listen to Jim Cornette or Vince Russo and what side of the wrestling arguments you're on, Shawn Michaels was hard to deal with in 1997 and 1998. When he somewhat retired, there was never really an official retirement. If you listen to Vince Russo, it was hard to tell when Shawn Michaels was really injured, because sometimes he'd say he's injured and he really wasn't injured. And then you had the really weird Lost My Smile stuff, which some people still to this day say was bullshit, and other people say it wasn't bullshit. And I don't even know what to think. It's probably like one of the most confusing things, but they didn't even get into all that. It was just kind of general. They more talked about Shawn Michaels and when he joined DX, and really, that was probably one of the most entertaining times for Shawn Michaels. Like, I will actually venture to say that, like, late 97, early 98 Shawn Michaels was probably, like, more entertaining than anything we saw in his return as far as, like an entertainment standpoint. I don't think he ever did anything that really topped that material. Like, that's how good it is. Now, as far as matches, that's another story. And the amount of moments, probably superseded it. And we see interviews with, Johnny Gargano, or as I refer to him, Johnny Garganorino. He says that he thinks Shawn Michaels' return from 2002 all the way up to 2010 was better than his first run with the company. And I kind of at first was like, oh, no. Like the old curmudgeon, old school fan. But then I kind of sat back and thought about it. I was like, well, wait a minute. I remember how hyped I was when Shawn Michaels returned at at the 2002 SummerSlam against Triple H in an unsanctioned street fight. I'm still not sure how that works. I remember how confused I was when Eric Bischoff says, well, I won't sanction it, but you're still letting it happen at the pay-per-view? Vince Russo has talked about this, and I was so happy when he did talk about it over on Channel Attitude, because it makes no fucking sense. You can't have something non-sanctioned and then have people pay for it on pay-per-view. I mean, I get it, it might make sense in the realm of WWE, like, oh, but we're not putting our official stamp of approval, but there's still a referee in there. And I think, they tried to make excuses, like they said, like Earl Hebner or whatever stepped up to be the ref in this match when no other referee would. But Eric Bischoff and Vince McMahon are still allowing it to happen on the show, like, whatever. I mean, I won't get into it, but when you kind of think about it, the logic is like, woohoo! Anyway, so Shawn Michaels, we saw that, like, he kind of only competed, like, a little bit, and then we saw, like, it started increasing. I don't think they really got that point across enough, because Shawn Michaels, like, wrestled sporadically. Like, I remember, like, when he won the Elimination Chamber, which is another great moment, and he wrestled Rob Van Dam on Raw, and then we wouldn't see him wrestle, like, after that. We saw, like, an angle at, like, Jeff Hardy then after, but it was mostly on pay-per-views. He would pretty consistently wrestle on the pay-per-views, but not all of them. Like, we wouldn't see him wrestle at, like, No Way Out 2003. I don't remember him having a match on that show. We would see, like, different pay-per-views with Shawn Michaels until it started to progress more and more, and then we pretty much saw him on Raw every week, like, in competition. And he did say he felt more comfortable, like sort of around Elimination Chamber. But I kind of just wanted to like inform you guys how it was as a viewer, and you know that's how I remember it happening. I haven't gone back and watched all the old Ruthless Aggression, like all the 2003 stuff, but Michaels was like pretty like sporadic like during this time. You know, he started wrestling a bit more in 2003, and by the time we got to like 2005 and 2006, like he started wrestling more and more, you know, and we saw him on like more Raws and everything. From what I remember anyway, it wasn't like just him, you know, jumping in complete. Like as he said with the SummerSlam match, he was getting, you know, his feet wet, getting back into the business, and it still is astounding. Like going back to like 2002, like the fact that that match was so good at SummerSlam, like it's. I remember doing my top 10. And I think it would definitely still be in there. Like, that match is just fucking amazing. Shawn Michaels and Triple H had so many good matches together, and I think in a way it is kind of like an underrated rivalry. Like, I don't think enough people really talk about them wrestling each other. I remember some people complaining it happened too many times, but whenever it did, and they always found a way of this series, like, it always took little breaks in between, but it always made sense because they were always at each other's throats, like indirectly, and Shawn would spend time wrestling like Ric Flair and Randy Orton and Batista, so they would break it up in between. You know, and we see like the moments like leading up to Shawn Michaels, like with Ric Flair, and you know, it was a really good career, and we talk about like the resurrection of DX and everything, and you know, even at the time, you know, it was fun. It really was. You know, I did enjoy them torturing Vince McMahon and everything. And, you know, we really didn't see too much of like DX versus McMahon. You know, they were more dealing like with Sergeant Slaughter and stuff and the Hart Foundation at the time. We did, you know, we really didn't get to see so much, and you know, of course, Stone Cold with Mike Tyson and all that. We didn't really get to see too much of McMahon and DX, so it was nice when they did have that. And you know, surprisingly though, they didn't really harp on that too much. Like I think they should have. Like we should, you know, about McMahon, interview McMahon about that, how it was to work with Shawn after Shawn being such a pain in the ass. But you know, we didn't see that. It would have been interesting for them to kind of go into that a bit more. You know, Vince is always stuck with Shawn. He's always stuck it out with Shawn, even though he was a pain in the ass for a while. But I don't know. They kind of just got through it. They talked about how they, you know, kind of got around Shawn doing some of the more like racy stuff and kind of letting Triple H do it instead, you know, after becoming a born again Christian. So they could have gone into that a little bit, but you know, people said that it was a watered down DX. Now the watered down DX came a little bit afterwards when they went PG, and we saw DX out there like in 2009. That's kind of like when they started to like water it down because it was, you know, it was PG. They couldn't do as much stuff like with women and things like that that made it fun. But yeah, definitely if we're comparing Triple H and Shawn Michaels in 2000, you know, the 2006, 2007 incarnation to the 1997 from a decade earlier, yeah, there's really like no contest that the 97 one will win. Like, for anyone who has not seen, like newer, younger fans here on this channel, if you've not seen Shawn Michaels in 1997, like mid to late 1997, you're missing out. Shawn Michaels was cutting some of the best promos. He was unchained. That was the start of the Attitude Era. Shawn ushered it in. He really did. Like, he was the one, like, really cutting the promos and kind of sort of being a little bit like Stone Cold at the time. You know, just in a little bit of a different style, but really not giving a shit like what he said, just really speaking his mind and like really unscripted promos, you know, that just had bullet points to them. But Shawn and Brett were really like letting the world know how much they really hated each other when it was bleeding through onto your TV screen. It was great stuff. And like I said, they do touch on that briefly at the beginning of this episode. That's why I really would have liked to see like what McMahon personally had to say about it like later on, and Shawn becoming a permanent fixture on television again. So it definitely was a big success, Shawn Michaels' return. He really like stepped it up, came back, and they also talked about Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, all these great matches he was putting on together. And, like, really, was that the original plan at WrestleMania 23? Were they really going to have were they really going to have Triple H and Cena again? Like, was that really what they were planning to do? That meant that they were going to have the same main event 2 years in a row. And not only that, but then at WrestleMania 24, then they had a triple threat, which would also include Triple H and John Cena. And, and they also factoring in Randy Orton. Like, that was the plan. That was truly the plan. I mean, that was, wow, that was like a bad idea, in my opinion. They made like that match was like total money. And it was like, but I don't really remember WrestleMania 22 being like the big buy WrestleMania that they had to do the same thing again. It was better off, we got a superior match with Shawn Michaels and John Cena. And from what I remember, the build was a lot better. It was fun. We kind of had that, the tag champions together of Shawn Michaels and John Cena, and then they went in to WrestleMania as the tag champions. It was a really interesting dynamic. They haven't done it since. They were thinking about doing it with Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks, but in a way it's kind of cool that, that they didn't give like that garbage match, that credential going into it. Now it kind of just stays exclusive to Cena and Shawn Michaels. So I do kind of like that dynamic. So yeah, very enjoyable. Like I said, they could have gone a little bit more into the DX stuff. Talk a little bit more about certain things. Like, I wouldn't have minded a longer episode because, I mean, we are talking about Shawn Michaels' return, which was a good, like, 7.5 years, like 7 years, really, because it was, like, more in the middle of 2002, and he left in early 2010, but the Ruthless Aggression era was long gone by that point. So, it would have been nice to have a bit more to it. And instead, we always have to make sure we get it around, like, 35 to 42 minutes or so. But let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get all notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.